Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Classic Conversations. Thank you so much for coming out today. I'm going to pass things off to Sydney to kick us off.
Well, that was fast.
Yeah,
Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everybody. I should say good afternoon. We're so glad to come back to our Masterpiece series after a few months away, and what a great season we're having. Thank you so much for supporting the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra the ways that you do. I am so thrilled to have two wonderful guests join me on the stage today. We have the distinguished composer Michael Daugherty and our soloist Courtney Hershey Bress. Please join me in welcoming them. You know the music of Michael Daugherty. We've performed many of his pieces. Just in recent seasons, we've done his electric guitar concerto, G's Bend, and his cello concerto, Tales of Hemingway. And those are just a few of the recent selections that we've featured of him. We're just delighted that he's visiting Cheyenne for the first time, and he made the trip out from the University of Michigan, where he's been professor for many decades now. So welcome.
Yeah. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So the origin of this piece really started, I think, with your relationship with each other, didn't it? Courtney was instrumental, no pun intended, in the sort of genesis of this piece, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about the concert tomorrow night will end with this fantastic harp concerto, which kind of blows the idea of a harp concerto out of the water. It's so incredible, and a perfect way to end a program as well, which is saying something. And so it's called Harp of Ages, and we'll just let the composer speak to us a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, thank you for that introduction. How long have we known each other?
We met, I joined the Colorado Symphony in 2001 when Marin Alsop was the music director, and we were playing a lot of Michael's music, and we recorded Philadelphia Stories. That's kind of when we really got to know each other. And then also at the Cabrillo Festival, where I played and you were a composer in residence. So we've known each other over 20 years.
Okay, and then you were able to convince the Colorado Symphony to commission a harp concerto.
Yes, so I had the idea pretty early on when we recorded Philadelphia Stories. There's a movement in it called the Telltale Harp. And it's with two harps antiphonally on stage. And I realized in that moment that Michael Daugherty really knew how to write for the harp, which is pretty rare when you know that someone really understands your instruments. So that's where I started to think about it. And then I think I approached you maybe 10 years later. And then it took another many years to make the project get going.
Let me just interject here, because the harp is its own kind of unique animal among orchestral instruments as a whole. And many times harpists have the unfortunate situation where pieces are written with a harp part or for the harp, and it's very not harpistic, right? And so there are a lot of things that are idiosyncratic to the harp. Maybe you could just speak to that for a minute or two.
Well, I think a lot of composers that haven't really studied the harp, maybe with a harpist, think of the harp as a piano.
Right, it's on the same type of grand scale.
And yes, the music looks like piano music, but we, first of all, only play with 8 fingers versus 10. We don't use our pinkies because our pinkies are too short and too weak. And the way we move on the instrument, we are against gravity, whereas when you're playing on a piano, you're with gravity. And there's so much more. Technically, how we play is completely different than how a pianist plays. Oh yes, and then of course we have 7 pedals at the bottom of the instrument. So if you're familiar with the piano, I'll just give you the quick brief how they're related. A harp, the strings of a harp are the white keys of the piano. My feet are the black keys. So all the sharps and flats and actually naturals are done with my feet. So there's 7 pedals, 1 for each note of the scale. So the D pedal, for instance, works all the Ds of the harp and changes the pitch. So when composers think they can just sit at a piano, oh, this sounds really good, let's put it on the harp. That doesn't work.
And also, there's different kinds of harps. So in Mexico and Latin America and Irish music and so forth, the harps are different. First of all, they don't have pedals, and they're much smaller. which means you can play much faster. So, because
Less tension.
Yeah, the strings here are really long. So the last movement was an Irish movement. Originally, I listened to a bunch of Irish harp music, and then I wrote something. And then the harpist I was working with in Ann Arbor said, I can't play this because it's too fast. It doesn't work with the long string. Because the Irish harp's really low, right? So it's very different. So anyways, the classical harp is different from the Irish harp, from the Mexican harp, and so forth.
And then, so this commission idea came about, and then the two of you worked very closely together during the composition of it. How did you get the idea of the Harp of Ages? Tell us, that's the title of the piece. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, for me, titles are really important.
They're always so your titles.
For me, I mean, for some composers not, but before I start work, I usually come up with the title first, the concept. So Tales of Hemingway, that was done here, kind of playing off of Tales of Hoffman, so to speak. But I like alliterations, if I can do it, come up with two words that are similar. But if not, usually the titles of books like For Whom the Bell Tolls, or give me another famous book title, To Kill a Mockingbird, right? Those are great titles. Once I have the title in my mind and the concept, then I can start to write the piece. Then I listen to all the harp concertos that have been written in the 20th century, in the 19th century. I listen to those for maybe 2 or 3 months. I study them, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And then I start to compose the piece. And since she was long distance, we would do Zoom things occasionally, but I had to work with a harp player where I live. So I would write something, and then I would have the harp player play it, and so forth, and I would revise it. And then I wanted to do different kinds of ways of approaching the harp. So it's 7 movements because 7 pedals on the harp. And that gave me a chance to do several different kinds of writing for the harp. So.
Yeah, and so you're tracing famous harpists of antiquity and modern era, and even future fiction era, and so you have this play on Rock of Ages with Harp of Ages. It's fantastic.
There's also a Harp of Ages. It's also a hymnal in Pentecostal Christian music from the 18th century. But anyways, okay, so we start from the beginning, so we will go way back. So let's go back to ancient Greece, right? And Sappho, the famous poetess who played the harp and wrote poetry. So that's our first movement. So it's kind of Greek sounding.
And it uses some of the rhythm of her poetry, I think.
Yeah, so my wife, Yopi Prince, teaches comparative literature at the University of Michigan, and her specialty is ancient Greek. She can actually read ancient Greek. So there's a rhythm that says da 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 da. That's the Sapphic stanza rhythm, it's called. So that's the rhythm that I use for that first movement.
Should I play the beginning of the first movement?
Sure, that would be great.
So the beginning of the first movement, Sappho Leaps, starts off with about 20 seconds of just solo harp, and then the orchestra joins in. And I start by knocking on the instrument, and then my left hand joins the knocking. My left hand starts playing while my right hand keeps knocking. So I'll just play the beginning of it.
Yeah, that's right there.
Rhythm with the knocking.
And then can you do that when you strum it too? D.
Oh, and then, yes. Then it also has nail glisses. I use the back of my nails, and you'll hear.
Yeah, and Do you want to explain a little bit about the drama at the very end of it? Do you want to give that away?
The drama.
At the end of the movement with the...
Oh.
Yeah, you should go ahead.
So, I think it's what you meant, but it's what I mean when I play the end. After this, at the very, very end, when you're knocking on the soundboard, at the last 2 beats, I slap the soundboard. And I'm pretty dramatic about it. My hands come up and then they just kind of drift off. And the legend has it that Sappho leapt to her death off of a cliff. And to me, that's her leaping off the cliff.
It's a pretty neat symbol. Yeah. I don't know if you had intended that, but it's a great... Yeah, exactly. Right on. Do it. Yeah.
Okay, then the next movement is Sister Juana de la
Inez,
Inez,
yeah.
yeah. Who was a famous Mexican nun in the
1600s.
16th century, or 17th century, okay. A famous Mexican nun who was very progressive. She played the harp, she wrote poetry, and she didn't agree with the Pope in a lot of issues. So she was eventually excommunicated from the Catholic Church. But she was very well known in Mexico, and she also played the harp. So I write a movement, using one of her, she was also a composer, so I take a fragment of a hymn that she wrote, and then we have, Mexican kind of harp music.
Yeah, and what I love about the beginning of this movement is the strings start, and it sounds like an organ playing. It's really quite beautiful how you wrote it with the theme.
Yeah, specifically asking for no vibrato and things of that nature, and just the counterpoint of it is so, it just takes you right to that sound of like a, not even so much like a fancy organ, but like you almost imagine like a primitive organ somewhere in New Spain in the 1600s. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Can you just play that little theme?
Yeah.
Yeah. Courtney's such a good sport. This is not the instrument she's going to be performing on tomorrow night. This is an instrument that we're very grateful we were able to borrow from East High School. But it's not her regular instrument, so that's a whole other little challenge. Thank you for that.
It takes you back to Mexico.
That's played again by a pair of mariachi trumpets in the orchestra. Oh my goodness, it's so great.
Now, are the trumpets able to do the...
Oh yeah, maybe not enough. You'll be at rehearsal tonight. You
So-
get more mariachi sound.
Mexican trumpet, so what they do is the vibrato's really wide, dee dee da 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 dee da dee dee da. It's a wide trumpet.
And it's as if I kind of, like when I programmed this concerto, the rest of the concert, I didn't yet know this score very well, but there's some amazing tie-ins with the rest of the program. So for instance, we're doing the Billy the Kid suite in the first half by Aaron Copland that has a Mexican jarabe dance where the trumpeter asked him to do the same kind of, almost the same kind of vibrato. Maybe not quite as much as he does in the Daugherty, but it's there's that nice time. Yeah.
Okay. Next movement.
King David. Oh, Uhura.
Oh, all right, now we go to Star Trek. Moving forward. And Uhura, who the communications officer, played the harp in some of the Star Trek episodes. Not many, just a couple, but enough that I thought, okay, I can have Uhura as one of the movements, playing the harp. So we go to 24th century harp playing. And can you just play a little of that theme for us?
And perhaps there's a little bit of the fact that Uhura is like from the African continent in that future.
Oh, yeah,
thing,
sorry.
And there's a call and response and some of those rhythms.
Yeah, so I listened to
The kora is the harp.
Yes.
the kora music from Africa, and kind of came up with sort of my own take on it.
gonna make you smile. It's just it's so beautiful. Such a great piece.
All right, next we move to
The oldest
Bible.
of them all, right?
The Bible, the Old
Yeah.
Testament of the Bible. David, right, played the harp. And to console King Saul. Do I have the right King Saul,
Yes,
right?
before David himself became king,
Yeah.
he helped Saul go to sleep.
Yeah, he saved his life by playing the harp for King Saul. And so I kind of, so I'm a big fan of those 50s movies like Ben-Hur and, King of Kings and whatever, El Cid and all those big, huge. The Ten Commandments, Most of those are written by Nicholas Rosa.
Oh, the
was
soundtracks,
was a composer. So I'm not quoting anything, but I'm kind of playing off that 50s biblical kind of music. I don't write that in the program, but that's kind of what I was thinking as I wrote it. So shall we hear a little bit of David?
Yeah, so it starts off with a harp cadenza that's like a prayer.
Yeah, it's like a prayer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Films era version of a biblical sound. Yeah.
As I was flying here, the person next to me was watching Gladiator 2. I've seen like every time I'm on the plane, there's a Gladiator 2 playing here, Gladiator 2 playing. I've seen the film many times. Okay, so now we're moving to.
I just want to stop for
yeah,
a second
yeah,
because
yeah.
we kind of went over the fact that there's Star Trek was in here.
Oh, yes.
And we just sort of like went through it, but a kind of obviously a recurring theme throughout your music is your integration of pop culture, if you will, or kind of just American contemporary culture with classical music. Can you tell us a little bit about when that started and how that started and what it means for you? And you do it in your own, distinctive way that's unlike any other composer right now. And it's been part of your musical output for many decades. I mean, from some of your most important first pieces in the 80s and everything.
That's interesting because a lot of the younger composers now are going back to writing very abstract music, which is interesting. I guess I'll try to make this really short. I grew up in Iowa. I played in rock and jazz bands and so forth. And then when I went to college, I studied, classical music and how to write for orchestras and bands and so forth. And then I learned, all the complicated techniques of writing abstract contemporary music, which was fashionable at the time. I even went to Europe to study with some very famous composers. Again, I was right in the midst of the avant-garde movement.
Yeah, I mean, famous, but very like avant-garde, atonal, or complex.
Yeah.
Composers like Stockhausen and Ligeti and others who were writing, very complex music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I like that music, but so an analogy is Grant Wood, the painter. He was from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I grew up. So Grant Wood is the one who painted American Gothic with the pitchfork and the farmer and his daughter. So when Grant Wood was young, he went to Paris. I went to Paris as well. Hemingway went to Paris. I was in Paris for 2 years, and Grant Wood did art in the style of the impressionistic artist, and and then went back to Iowa and said, I really don't see a future in me doing this because it's French. So then said, well, why don't you use Iowa as a background? So then he started doing these famous paintings we know, like American Gothic, which has an American theme to it. Same way with Thomas Hart Benton, who did the amazing murals of Americana, and in the 1950s 30s and 40s as well.
There's even a parallel with Copeland, and that
Well,
ties in with Billy the Kid too.
Yeah.
I mean, he studied in Paris, Tanya Boulanger. He came back writing a little bit more dissonant, music that tried to infuse some elements of jazz, but with kind of a complex academic, kind of composition. And then the Great Depression hit, and he decided to write music for the people. And hence we got Billy the Kid and Rodeo and Appalachian Spring.
Yeah, the funny thing about Eric Copeland, who lived in Brooklyn, I don't think he ever came out west his whole life, as far as I know.
I know he went to Latin America a few times.
Yeah,
So
but he wrote these cowboy pieces. I don't think he ever came to Cheyenne. So it's kind of imaginary in his mind. But yes, using quotations, American. I mean, there's lots of folk songs in Billy the Kid, right? And many of his pieces. Same thing with Stravinsky. But if you go back to classical music, I was just on a concert, Columbus Symphony. Second half they played Dvorak Eighth, and I read the program note. It's all folk music from the Czech Republic. But of course, we don't recognize the tunes now. But he knew the tunes back then. And it was funny when Dvorak came to America that he was the one who told an American composer, you should be using American, ideas for your music, which he did in the Ninth Symphony. So anyway, and so I asked my famous teacher, Daugherty. He lived in Germany. So how do I know when I'm writing the music I should write? He said, when I don't like it. That was interesting, right? So I knew I had to go back to America and start it. I was a huge fan of Elvis. I wrote some Elvis pieces. I wrote a big symphony called Metropolis Symphony based on the Superman comics. And that's, I got a performance by the New York Philharmonic, and then the Baltimore Symphony got played at Carnegie Hall. And then a record executive from Decca Records was there, said I'd like to record it. And that's kind of how things started going. And then, I just write music that I connect to the idea behind it. A funny story I got to tell. When I was a student in New York, 1976 to 78, I had a job at Carnegie Hall as an usher. And so about 15 years later, I come back and the Baltimore Symphony is playing my symphony at Carnegie Hall. So the guy who had hired me as an usher was still there. I come to the back and say, what are you doing here? I'm having a piece played tonight. He goes, right, sure. As I'm coming off the stage, he goes, well, you're the first usher who ever had a piece played at Carnegie Hall. It's really too scary. Sorry, we got off the.
No, this is the good stuff.
Okay.
Go on.
But Star Trek, I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. I know especially the old Star Trek, I know all the music very well, the themes. I can recognize the Kirk theme, the Spock themes, and so forth. And I actually met one of the composers, Fred Steiner, who wrote many of the music for the old episodes. He lived in Hollywood. And I was able to meet him and go to his house once. And he had all the scores for many of the Star Trek episodes. He goes, which episode would you like to see? I said, well, what about this one? And he pulled it out and showed me the sketches and stuff. So that was cool, yeah.
That's amazing. So you were obviously a huge Superman fan.
Yes, Superman, the Star Trek. All that
Star
stuff.
Trek.
Yeah, yep.
So then that brings us to the next movement, which again, like the third movement with Uhura and Star Trek, brings up some popular culture. Do you want to introduce that? Yeah.
So one more thing, because we haven't really said this. So at the beginning of Uhura that you heard me play, there's actually solo horn behind me playing a little snippet of the Star Trek theme.
Yes.
So you will hear that come up a couple of times. In
Very,
the
very
movement.
small. Yes.
Very small.
Yeah.
But it's recognized.
Where we don't need licensing rights.
Yes.
But then there's another kind of pop culture reference, if you will, for the Marx Brothers. Do you want to introduce that one, or Michael?
Okay, so the next movement is called Harpo Speaks. And if you know Harpo Marx, he never spoke in his movies, but he did play the harp, and he played it quite well. And Michael decided that this would be my solo movement. So it's the big cadenza of the whole concerto, and it's about 3 minutes long, and it's the most wild out of the whole thing.
Fitting for Harpo and his comedy and his hijinks,
Uses
right?
all the modern techniques.
Yes, so Michael wanted to use all the modern techniques. So I do some quite wild things. Do you want me to demonstrate it?
Yes.
So one of them is that, so as a harpist, we're taught to try to never let you know that we're changing pedals, because that's changing the pitch, and we're always taught to be as quiet as we possibly can. Not in this movement. So we do, one of the things we do is a pedal gliss. And basically, when I have something ringing already, a string that's already ringing, I move that pedal to change the pitch while it's ringing. You hear that? Or So that's that, and actually that's a modern technique that's used a lot in a lot of contemporary harp music. But the pedal buzz is not used very much. It's what we try to avoid most of the time. And you'll hear it twice. It's quite striking when you hear it. But it's what you do is you put the pedal in between two notches, which basically makes this mechanism up here rattle, and it sounds like this.
Isn't that awesome? Can't you just imagine the bullhorn like wah, wah, of Marshall Marks? Wah, wah. It's so perfect.
So yeah, it's quite surprising, and I mean to do it.
I know, you're like, am I really going to do this? Here it goes. Something you never thought you'd actually do in performance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I think I've done it on maybe one orchestral piece. Actually, it might have been one of your orchestral pieces. One of the ones that had a harp cadenza.
And harp always played harmonics?
Yeah, so there's harmonics, which is very typical of the harp. Instead of... and then there's an effect we call the xylophone effect, which actually comes back in the last movement too. And the xylophone effect is it sounds a little bit like a xylophone, that's why it's called that. And basically I put my hands at the bottom of the strings and they are slightly muffled. So instead, the first thing I'll play is just, well, I'll play it while holding the microphone. Whoops, let me change the pedals for you. So that's normal playing, and this is xylophone playing. So it's just a different sound color that you'll hear.
He's also famous for his glisses at the end.
Yeah, so he always plays glisses at the end of those movies.
Every video, if you all the Harpo Marx excerpts from movies are on YouTube, so you can watch them. In fact, somebody took every Harpo Marx movie where he plays the harp and made a big video. But at the end, he always does the same thing. Every song he plays in the movies, he does the same thing.
It's like a signature.
It's a signature, yeah.
So I'm going to just play the beginning of the gliss section, which is the end, and it gets pretty wild, and I'm only playing the beginning because it kills my fingers if I do it more than once a day.
But can you do when you go back and forth at the same time, just at the end?
Oh, I can do that, yeah, but first let me just sit, this is how it starts. There's these huge massive glisses that sound like this. And I'm only going to do that once.
It does it more, but it kills your fingers, right?
Yes, it kills my fingers because I give it my all.
I mean, harpists, it's common for them to have blisters on their fingers, right? Or to bleed, right?
Well, no, I mean, you try to avoid it.
Well, I mean, it happens. Every harpist has had that.
Oh, yes, every
Yeah.
harpist. We have the fingers that split open and blisters and yes.
You were saying to some of the students at East High yesterday that you harpists use crazy glue to like.
Yes, actually, I have a crack on the edge of this finger right now that's just about healed, but I have crazy glue on it holding it together.
That's what they do. Isn't that amazing? Dedication to their art, right? That's great for harpists. And then, you know, it's interesting that harp music has some of the most beautiful musical terms as well, and those are all in this piece as well. Things like bisbigliando and près de la table and étouffé. So these are standard harp terms, and Michael uses them as well. But maybe you could explain a little bit of that because the bisbigliando we use quite a bit. Yeah.
Play this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
A bisbigliando is basically a trill,
It's like whispering.
but it's a trill that usually uses enharmonics, and if you don't know what an enharmonic is, an F flat is the same thing as an E. So we play both of those. We're the only instrument that can do this. We can play two different strings that sound the same pitch. And that's also how we do a lot of trills anyways, but it can be multiple notes that sound together. So something like this, I have to figure out a key. Using the music.
Just play it.
Anything. Let's just see.
Can you do it with one note?
Yeah, what?
Well, that.
Yeah, that's that effect where it's the same note, but it's sort of like almost like a tremolo on a string.
Right, and then près de la table, which we do a lot, is play, in French means to play near the table. And instead of sounding like this, which is normal, it sounds more like a guitar. Some people call it the guitar effect. So that gives it a different color. And what was the other one? Oh, étouffée, which is just muffle, but we muffle all the time.
Yeah. So then that takes us to the 6th movement, and they're all short, right? It's 7 movements, but it's a half an hour. It's kind of the normal concerto type length.
I was worried, as I was writing, I go, okay, this piece can't get too long, you know, so
Yeah.
I had to like make some cuts, because it was gonna be like 50 minutes long. So cut the movements back. What's the next movement again?
The Detroit Blues.
Oh, Detroit Blues. So I live near Detroit, and jazz harp actually came out of Detroit. There were 2 famous black harpists, Alice Coltrane and
Dorothy Ashby.
Dorothy Ashby. Sorry. So they developed the jazz harp, and that was in Detroit. So I thought, okay, I have to, have a movement. So I listened to the recordings of both Alice Coltrane and Dorothy Ashby. Listened to them, and then came up with my own kind of take on it. And do you want to play a little blues for us?
Thank you, Courtney. Yeah.
You mean at the end? There's the big long arpeggio?
The one right there on that page to your left, that just that jazz chord.
I don't know what you're doing. I like this one. Let me play the end. Let me play the end.
Yeah. I mean, just play this chord once so they can hear it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It really sounds fantastic on the harp.
Wrong key. F natural, G sharp. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But the end is really
the
cool.
ending.
So that's called bending a note?
Yeah. Yeah, bending the pitch. Yeah, exactly. So cool.
So one of the challenges for the composer is the harp is a delicate instrument, so how do you balance a huge orchestra with the harp? So we do amplify the harp slightly. That's been a common practice in the 20th century since the Hinastera harp concerto, right? To slightly amplify, not much,
But
just a
you
little
won't
bit.
really notice it.
Yeah, just a little bit. But again, you have to be very careful in the scoring because that's the challenge. Is to make it something interesting for the orchestra, but still that you can hear the harp, and the harp is in the forefront of the piece.
I was just going to say, you really gave the orchestra a lot to do, though, and it's a very fulfilling thing to play as the musicians in the orchestra. One of the effects that you seem to really delight in this piece, in several movements, is the snap pizzicato. Do you want to maybe just mention a little bit about that, or there's also the percussiveness of the harp tapping, and there's also this percussiveness in the lower strings, or sometimes all the strings.
Yeah, well, there's something I have the strings do, which actually the lower strings usually, but they can pitch really excessively to get, and the string bounces back against the wood. It's called snap pits, and actually some players can give me a hard time.
Oh yeah. So just for those of you who aren't string players, pizzicato, of course, is when they pluck the string instead of using the bow. And so a snap pitch, which sometimes is called a Bartok pitch, because Bartok, the composer, was the first to really call for this in his music, is where, exactly as Michael said, that you pluck it so hard and so loud that it snaps back against the fingerboard, and it sounds like a percussion instrument. Yeah. But it does kind of mess with their tuning, and it's not great on fine instruments. So sometimes you get some people who are like, yeah.
And one thing about a lot of people, which I learned from Courtney, is harpists have to show up like an hour before the concert,
Well, at least I do.
at least an hour, because they have to tune their harp.
And I tune like 3 times.
They got to tune all those with the key. They have to go through all the
Every single
strings.
string.
Yeah,
It's a
and tune.
very imperfect instrument, and
Yeah.
even the best instruments, you tweak them with the tuning for what you're playing. So when I'm in the orchestra, if I'm playing Copland's Third Symphony versus Bernstein's Chichester Psalms, all tuned slightly differently depending on that instrument and what, they're just not perfect, let's just put it that way.
And also, you're restricted to the kind of car you can drive.
Because her harp has to fit in the car. So it's like I had to have a hatchback, right?
Yeah, I drive a screw out now.
Yeah, it's got to fit back there. Plus, you have to be strong because she lifts the harp herself, right?
Yes, but I don't do it very often.
Okay.
I'm spoiled.
And you have special shoes you were telling me?
Oh yeah, so I have a pair of harp shoes that I'm wearing on Saturday night and for all of our rehearsals that I've had for over a decade, and I should have bought 10 pairs of them because I go into shoe stores and I can't find one I like as well as the ones I'm wearing, and I'm just gonna wear them until they die.
And can you tell them about the harp that you bought in Chicago?
Yeah, so I'm playing on a very, very rare instrument. Less than 60 of them have ever been made. And Lyman Healy, which is basically, as far as I'm concerned, the best harp maker in the world, is based in Chicago. And if you're ever there, you should take a tour. They do tours of the factory, which is fascinating. Because they're all handmade. There's woodworkers right out of woodworking school that hand carve the wood. There's gilders. My harp has gold gilding on it. There are gilders. There's an actual room where the gilding is floating in the air and they're putting it onto the instruments. It's fascinating. There's also more than 2,000 moving parts in a harp. People don't realize how mechanical they are. So I had put in an order to buy a new instrument that was about half the cost of the one I ended up with. And they always have a waiting list. And I was there buying an instrument for the University of Denver. And I had a little extra time. And they said, well, the showroom is yours, the stage is yours, do whatever you want. So I just decided they had a whole bunch of these fancy harps on stage, and I just went down the line and thought, oh, I'm gonna have some fun. And I almost didn't play this instrument because I was like, first of all, I can't afford it. And second of all, wow. That's kind of what went through my head, like, oh, I'll never own an instrument like that. I sat down and I played one chord on it. And I swear it was like I was hit by a bolt of lightning. I had never heard an instrument that sounded that good, ever. And I called it back in the sales lady who's known me forever, and she just had a smirk on her face. She already knew, everybody knew how amazing the instrument was, but the only reason it hadn't sold is because it was so expensive, and most people can't afford it, even professionals. So, and a lot of times these expensive harps are bought by people who have a lot of money that don't really play, and they sit in these beautiful homes and look wonderful, but they don't.
Well, that's why that loan shark keeps showing up to your house. Where's the money?
So anyways, she came in and then I started playing for her, and she stopped me and she said, that was made for you. And I was like, I know. It was like, I just left. I said, the last thing I said to her was, the instrument that I buy has to sound like that. And as I left the building, she said, oh no, we're in trouble. Courtney's never gonna be happy. And I went home, and like 3 months later, I was still talking about it. And I was talking to my stepmom on the phone, and she said, enough is enough. I don't care what it takes. Figure out a loan. If we have to help you, we'll help you buy the harp. So I called up Lyman Healy the next morning. They had shipped the harp to Toronto to another showroom because it hadn't sold. And they put an immediate hold on it. I had to wait weeks because it got stuck in customs. It was kind of a mess. And this was in February when I bought it. And then I didn't get it till March. The premiere of the concerto was in May. So it kind of all worked out.
Imagine if the tariffs would have gone into place from Canada. But even more.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then when it was shipped to Denver, I was terrified. But at that time, we still had our lovely music store, Classy Music, that just shut their doors recently. And I said to them, I want you guys to have the harp delivered, because what if I'm at work? And guess what? I was at work when the truck pulled up. So I got the call. I actually got permission from the symphony. I took off. I went straight to the store so that I can use the instrument. And I just paid it off. I had to take out a home equity loan on the instrument. That's how I got it. But I just got an inheritance, which is very dear to me. So my dad, it was his last gift. And I paid it off. You're going to hear it on Saturday night.
It's an incredible instrument, and it's beautiful
Yeah, I mean,
looking and sounding.
Yeah, it's a piece of art. It's all hand done. The even the soundboard, even from a distance, you'll see the soundboards all ornate, all hand done. Everything was hand done on this instrument, and I never needed something that fancy, but when you hear the sound, it's like, I had to have it. I
And it
didn't care
chose
how-
you. It's like, you know. when-
It chose me.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing.
You know, how come harps were always going way back for, you know, back for forever, you know, have fancy gold trimmings on it? What's that come from, to do that?
Well,
It's
I
like,
mean,
like the Baroque period, right?
yeah, I think that, I mean, harps were very standard in wealthy homes way back.
So they're very ornate.
Yeah, so you would see a harp and it was ornate because they were like a piano. All these fancy homes had harps in them. They were smaller than the full-size harps of today. Yeah.
So then we come to the last movement, and there's a very personal connection with why we're ending with this Irish music and this particular occasion.
Okay, so, my daughter, yes. Well, first off, Irish, Michael Kevin Daugherty. The oldest of 5 boys, Michael, Patrick, Timothy, Matthew, and Thomas. We're not Catholic though, but anyway. 5 boys, all Irish. So my daughter was married a couple years ago, and as I was composing the piece, I thought it'd be like a wedding, you know, because Irish harp is often used in Irish weddings, and also it was used in more weddings and funerals. So I thought, okay, so I decided to dedicate that movement to my daughter at her wedding, which I've never done before, and also to mix in the Irish heritage, and then plus you have to have, if you're going to have a harpsichord, you have to, you know, Ireland is the official instrument of Ireland, so we had to do that, and that was the hardest move for me. The hardest movement to compose was this one because
We did a lot together when I was in town.
it's because it's very fast. So
It's very fast. There's a lot of challenging parts for everybody in it.
yeah.
It's a true culmination
And I
of
think
the
it's the
journey.
longest.
It is the
movement.
longest,
Yeah.
It's the longest movement too. And of course, you not only quote the Irish tune, Minstrel Boy, right? But also Bach. So I don't know if you're giving too much
Oh,
away.
yes,
with that,
yes.
But,
Don't ask me why. I decided to, as I was writing, actually the Bach, Jesu Joy of Man's Desire, actually, I could superimpose that over the thing I wrote. I thought, okay, why not? I'll just,
yeah.
because many harpists play Bach, and so I thought, well, I'll just put it all together and, you know, whatever. So.
And then there's a little wedding music in there.
There is
It's
some-
tiny chords.
Can you just play the little Irish shape, just the beginning of it, so we hear? Now notice she's going to play between 2 hands because it's fast. You have to play between the left and the right hand. It goes back and forth. And then the part where you have to go the right and left hand, you have to go back and forth.
Are you talking about
Yeah,
like,
right there. on
oh,
the
you're
top.
talking about Yesu?
Yeah, that part, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Minstrel Boy, flavor.
Yeah, this is from the Irish, is it a hymn or is it just a folk song?
Just an old folk
An
song
old folk
from
song.
Ireland that, for
Beautiful. Danny would have not liked this
You would
piece,
probably not have liked
and
it.
we're so glad that you wrote it.
Well, I had a blast writing it, and it's, we have an amazing recording on Naxos. You can stream it and so forth, and also, you know, she's been playing it around, so I'm very excited.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like Michael and I, we always knew each other, but we got to know each other a lot more during that year. Because I flew into Ann Arbor a few times and we worked on things, and once in a while I would struggle. I was sight reading anyways, and he would say, "Why is that harp?" And then we'd fix it, and yeah, we got to know each other. And then we did the international premiere in Bogota which by coincidence, that's also the city that his daughter got married in.
Isn't that amazing?
That-
That
Is
it
that
all worked
truly
out
just
that way.
coincidence?
And so we all, the whole family came down to Bogota for the
So
international
I can take
premiere.
it, so not only, that was just by chance that it was programmed in Bogota, Colombia, where my daughter was married, that was a fluke. But I don't do Facebook very often, but I did put a picture of my daughter saying, oh, I'm here for my daughter's wedding. About an hour later, I get a Facebook notice from Zul Bailey, the cellist.
Yeah.
He tells the woman, hey, I'm in Bogota, and I'm playing, he wasn't playing my piece, but I'm playing with the other orchestra, playing a concerto, and he was staying at a hotel like two blocks away from where I was.
Amazing.
That's pretty weird. Yeah.
Small world.
We know Zool well.
Yeah, we do.
That quick
About
season.
about Facebook, you know, you
Yeah.
never know. Anyways, yeah, so we probably should take some questions, probably.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, how it's such a privilege to have such an esteemed composer here and also such an amazing guest artist. I'm sure you have questions. It's so rare to have a harp soloist, so that's a whole nother area you might have questions. Sure. Yeah. Lucy, go ahead.
So I was curious as to how you write the, what I would term percussion aspects of knocking. Like it's an open hand on one side, a closed hand on the other. How do you put that in a score so that the musician knows what you as a composer want?
Well, a lot of the special effects are kind of they're internationally known for harpists. But like that specifically, he actually wrote it out to do the back of the harp and then the soundboard of the harp. So that you actually know, we made sure we checked with each other so that for publishing, it would be obvious when you slapped the instrument versus knocking, that kind of thing. So it's very
Just
obvious to a
slap,
harpist.
knock, slap, knock. You just
So
like
you
the
use
text.
the actual words.
The words are in there, yeah.
The words are in there, but there's also ways of writing things. We do also a thunder effect, which I didn't talk about, and that's when you actually hit the strings like this. And there's a way of writing that harpists know that means hit the strings like that.
That's cool. Yeah, there are some standard notations, but then it's really good the way you were very clear in the score about exactly what you wanted. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good
Because
question.
someday I won't be around, so.
Other questions?
How old were you when you began playing the harp?
I started the piano at age 6, and then the harp at age 7. And I played both of them until I was 14, and then I quit the piano.
What do you want to explain about your influence of why the harp?
Oh yeah, I should definitely say that. So the only reason I play the harp is because of my mom. My mom was the party freelance harpist of Pittsburgh when I was growing up. I mean, my mom did everything, and she was dressed to the nines, and she had a gold harp, and she played every big party, wedding, anything that happened in the city of Pittsburgh. So when I was a little girl, I would always hear her play, and she decided, my mom wanted to start when she was younger, but she didn't start till college, which is why she didn't become a player like I am. She would, playing parties and weddings was a lot easier for her. The stage kind of frightened her. So when I said I wanted to play, she was like, absolutely, and I will get you the top teacher in town, because I'm not teaching you. Which was smart.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, my first job, if you don't read my bio, my first job, I played the harp for the Army. I was with the U.S. Army Field Band in Washington, D.C., and there's, 5 or 6 military bands now that are just professional musicians. A week after graduating from the Eastman School of Music, I went into basic training, which is quite a wake-up call. And then I showed up in D.C. and started playing for the Army for 3 years before I did one enlistment, and I had started taking auditions and realized my dream of being in an orchestra was gonna happen, so I quit and went back to school to get my master's, and that's when I got the job in Colorado Symphony.
Nice. Nice. Other questions?
You say you have 7 pedals, and how do they work?
Okay, let me do a quick demo for you. So the outside pedal on this harp, well, on any harp, is the D pedal. So this is a D pedal. The pedals are attached in the base of the instrument to rods that go up through the column and then come into the neck where all the mechanism is. And there's little discs up here that turn. and they basically shorten or lengthen the string. So right now, it's in its purest form, which is a D flat. There's no turning of the discs, and it sounds like this. When I go down one notch, a couple of the discs turn. It's a little out of tune. Turns into a D natural, and then the next disc turns, shortens the string more, and becomes a D sharp.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we play even slow music, our feet are moving really fast. Most people have no idea because they don't see us. In an orchestra, we're in the back, so you don't always see the harp.
We put the harp up front.
But yes,
I love it when the harp's up front. People want to see the harp, and it helps them hear it better when they see it. So we always have our harpists up front. In fact, in the first half of the program, there's harp in the Billy the Kid Suite, so Tonya will be playing that. Yeah, so that's neat. There's a neat connection with Tonya, our regular harpist, is that Courtney and she are very close friends, but also Courtney was her teacher.
Yeah, so Tonya and I are actually the same age, and I got to know her years ago because her sister-in-law also plays with me in the Colorado Symphony, and Rachel said to me, oh, you gotta have Tonya sub with you also. So Tonya started playing with me years ago, and I was teaching at Colorado State University for a while, and as soon as I got appointed, Tonya said she always wanted to get her master's degree. And she didn't have it. She said, I'm going back to school, I'm gonna go study with Courtney. So she studied with me, and it was really nice because she was my student, but we were also colleagues. And we had a great time together, and then she graduated, and I actually don't teach there anymore, I'm just at University of Denver. And, but she continues to play for me, and actually Wednesday night while I was rehearsing here, Tonya was playing principal for me in Denver.
At the Colorado Symphony.
So we're very good friends.
And weren't you the faculty at University of Wyoming for a while?
I'm still at the University of Wyoming.
Yeah.
I'm remote. My students drive to me because it's too far.
But that's a pretty cool Wyoming connection for us. That's nice. Very nice. We should have you go over there and talk to some of their composition students in Laramie. Yeah.
You were busy that week because we talked about it.
Yeah,
You were doing a world premiere somewhere.
Oh. So one of Michael's coolest pieces is entitled Night Owl. It's an orchestra piece. And I bring it up because I learned a little something about you from Courtney just the other day, that Courtney would sometimes get snippets of this concerto when it was still in process and you were still writing bits of it, and they would come to her from like you emailing her at 3 in the morning. So I wanted to ask you about your compositional, I hope I'm not revealing too much, but it seems like you yourself are a night owl. Tell us a little bit about your process. Do you really compose like after midnight?
Yeah, just like Patsy Cline. She didn't want to record that song either, because it's about a prostitute actually. But that was her biggest hit, Walking After Midnight, whatever. What's it called?
Yeah.
I'm walking after midnight with
Yeah.
Patsy Cline.
Exactly.
Well, I think because I grew up for most of many years of my life playing gigs, rock bands or jazz gigs, and they went from 10 to 2 o'clock in the morning, so, or 8 to 1, whatever. So I think I became an idol. My father was a dance band drummer, so he'd work in the evenings and would get home to 2 or 3 in the morning. So I think I just got to that groove of staying up late. Also, Sinatra, Elvis, these guys stayed up late, right? I kind of, something hits me around 9 o'clock. So I go to my studio. I think it's all because it's quiet. There's no emails coming in, there's no phone calls, and I can actually think, and I need some space to think, and that's a good time. It's quiet. I go down and kind of go into my own world. So I have a pretty big studio. It's like 20 feet by 20 feet, with 12-foot ceilings, and I'm a huge collector. It's kind of like walking into an antique store. I have like collections. I have a Las Vegas collection of all sorts of paraphernalia. I have a cowboy collection, Roy Rogers stuff. I collect metal lunch boxes from the 1950s. I have the Star Trek and the Superman lunchbox, which is the most sought after. I collect autographs. I have Aaron Copland's autograph, and Bernstein, Gershwin, and so forth and so on. Sorry, I thought I turned my phone off. Sorry about that.
See, it's not late at night when you're not getting calls.
Sorry, I thought I put it on. I just let the bongos, I'm kind of groove along with bongos. Anyway, and I'm just a late night person, and I often get my ideas late at night.
And when his emails came through, don't worry, it didn't wake me up. I just would wake up the next morning and go, oh yeah, Michael was composing last night.
Yeah. In the middle of the night. Yeah. Well, thank you both so much. And we have a little bit of time, 5 minutes. Any other last questions, or do you want me to quickly talk to you about the rest of the pieces of the program? Nah. We're good. This was like very satisfying, right? I mean, wow. Any other questions for Michael or Courtney? No? It's a great all-American program, and I'm so excited for this concerto especially. And Courtney and I have been talking about doing it for a number of years, so this is a thrill to finally see it realized. And what a special thrill to have you here. If you're
Well, we
into
finally
cowboy,
met. First time
I
we actually
know,
met.
finally met.
All these years
Yeah.
ago. It's great.
Yeah, and I've done, your UFO percussion concerto. I've done many of your pieces
Wow,
over
thank
the
you
years.
very much.
So this is super special. And if you're interested in adding to your cowboy collection, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we have some things for you probably in Cheyenne for that. We are the home of the Frontier Days, daddy of them all rodeo. So, right.
Will
Well,
you come back,
Yes, come back.
please?
Both of you.
Nice. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra and all of the wonderful arts community that we have here in Cheyenne. We want to thank our partners at the Laramie County Library for being so fantastic, for doing these. Thank you. Geraldine, did you have any other announcements about upcoming events?
Yeah, first we need a round of applause for them.